So having seen how the domains do work, or how we actually create these, we can move to the next tool. So I'm going to go ahead and minimize this as well. So with the domains, this section for the domains, as of now, we don't need to do much with the WordPress and site publishing and all this. So for now, we keep this precise to up to that. And I'll also minimize the matrix. We don't need this for now. Now I think I could move into the databases. Now regarding the database tool, let me first format this real fast. Now the database tool is very essential because whenever you're, for example, going to host the backend, we believe that for products that are dynamic, there is always going to be a database. So that means that your backend at some point of time is going to have a database, and this database must also be hosted. So depending on the type of database, but for this demo, I'm going to work with a relational database software and also a relational database. So with the databases tool, of course, this is databases. It always has some other subsections. So the databases has the phpMyAdmin and also manage my databases, and also the database wizard, and then maybe remote database access. So as a beginner, the main ones that you really need are one. First of all, I think I can take you through the phpMyAdmin. For those that have worked with XAMPP, I think you've already seen this admin dashboard that helps us to manage our databases via the graphical user interface. So by default, this is how phpMyAdmin looks like. And of course, this is built on terms of Apache for the server. Though, when I try to minimize here, you see that we do not have any databases. With phpMyAdmin, this is how the interface looks like. And if you're new to it, the databases are always sectioned on the sidebar here. And we also have the menu items where you can, for example, click on the databases, and also you can work with the SQL command line interface here, and exporting and importing. So most of the times, if you really wanted to create a database via the SQL feature here, you could say create database. Then, for example, DemoDB. Then you go ahead and click on go. So you see that at this point of time, you do not have the ability of creating the database, and the response we have is access denied for this user. So you always have the ability of creating databases via the manage my database tool. So I'm going to go ahead and open this up. So when you click on it, manage databases, I think I can also have this updated here. So for the files in here, we're interested in the file manager, and also the git version control was part of the files section. And then the domains, so this was part of the domains, and also to ensure that the sub feature is highlighted in a different color, I can update this real fast and copy it and paste it here for these others. Then same applies to the domains because it is a tool under the main section here. Then for the databases, we are really interested in the manage, actually phpMyAdmin, and we also need manage my databases. Yes, so having updated that, I'll now move back here. Now with this tool, all we always do is creating a database and also creating a database user. Just like we always work locally, in that if you're going to create a database, you will need the database, and you need the database name and also the user for the database. So most of the times locally, if you're working with, for example, XAMPP, you notice that we always have a default user for the database, and this is always root, or the root user. So unlike the cPanel, you always must create the user for the database and assign the user to the DB. So regarding this, first of all, we first create a database, and then having created the database, we go ahead and create a DB user or the database user. And having created a database user, we always assign the DB user to the database. And having done that, we assign all privileges to this user. But of course, the privileges depend on what exactly you want the user to do. But most of the times, we tend to assign all the privileges to the DB user. So this is what we are going to follow and have the database and users created. So the first thing is to create the database. Now, locally, most of the times when you're going to create a database, you see that the database is always going to have a name. For example, these are some of the databases that I have. And these are some of the database names, like for example hardware system live, and etc. So you notice that if you are really working with the cPanel, there is always a prefix for you set here, according of course to the domain name that you bought. So this one already has a prefix here. So if I'm really going to create a new database, all I want to do is to, for example, just go ahead and say this much, maybe DB precisely, and then I go ahead and say create the database. So you're going to always receive a notification message that this database has been created for you. Then you click on go back. So when you go back here, of course, by default, you will not see the database. But when you scroll down, you're going to look at the section that has current databases. And you see that at this point of time, this table has the database name and of course the size, and apparently it is 0 bytes because we haven't created any tables in the database and it doesn't have any privileged users. Regarding the actions, you always have the ability of renaming the database and also deleting the DB. And of course, the fact that you can always have a number of databases will ensure that this interface ensures that the data is paginated. So whenever you have the database, the next step is always to create a database user. So just like we did create the database, it is the same way we go ahead and create a database user for the database. So it also has the username, but though it ensures that it tracks the data, it ensures that it tracks the password for this user. So you see that the prefix is already here. So most of the times you can pass in a new value. But if we already have the DB, then I can work with the prefix, then the value here to be user. Now, in terms of the passwords, you can always manually pass in a password that you want to work with. Though you can also work with a password generator here. And with a password generator, the way it works is that, of course, you can always have a randomly generated password for you. For example, if you wanted to go ahead with this one, you ensure that you copy it up first, and then having copied it up, you say I have copied this password in a safe place. Then once that is done, you go ahead and, so for example, let me just have it created, copied in here. Then I'll go ahead and say use password. So once that has been added there, this is of course going to be assigned. So most of the times, of course, you want to go ahead and keep track of the DB password. Like for example, if I just go ahead and paste it here, but of course it's not recommended that you share your passwords, but of course it's recommended that you do not share your passwords for the database with any password. So those must be secretly kept. So having created that, you click on create user. So for now, we click on go back. So whenever we have that, all you have to do is again to scroll down, and on the section of database users, you will see that we have the current users section created here. So this is the username for this user here. And all we have to do is now to ensure that we add a user to the database. So the way we add a user to the database is by, of course, apparently we only have one user, and then this is the DB. So we just have to click on add, and this will always redirect to the database username and also the database name. And in here, we must ensure that we grant privileges or permissions to this user. So users always have permissions, like for example, can this database user alter the database content? Can they delete? Can they create? Can they drop? And etc. So most of the times we always ensure that we pass on or check this out to ensure that we assign all the privileges to this database user. And having done that, you click on make changes. So once these have been saved successfully, you click on go back. So at this point of time, you'll see that the privileges have been updated for the database, this much DB. And at this point of time, you are good to go. So it is always the same flow for any other data, for any relational database that you want to work with. So having created the database user and assigning them the privileges, you always move back to phpMyAdmin and of course refresh. So you see that when I refresh, we do have the database created here, and when I click on it, you see that this is how the database is looking like. So now at this point of time, if for example you're switching into production, we believe that the result is going to be a database for the project or for the back end. So this database, of course, you're not going to, of course, create it. You're not going to create the database content online, but what we do is we ensure that we import the database that is going to be used for the production environment. But while this was already coming from what we had initially in the development environment. So for example, if this is the database I'm going to work with, all you have to do is, of course, this is my local database for phpMyAdmin. So you click on export, then you go ahead and ensure that the format is SQL by default, then you just click on export. So once this has been exported, all you have to do is to come back this side. And of course, you must select the database first. Then you click on import. Then you go ahead and select choose a file and have the file selected. Then you scroll down and click on import. So once all your database tables do not have issues, they will be imported successfully. And of course, when I come back here, you see that this is the data that I do have. Of course, now this data is just a guide to show you how we do import and export from environment to the production environment. So I think this is all you have to know in terms of how that tool works for the databases. And all the actions, all the operations that we always do on databases can be done here as well while it is live. All you have to do is to access the SQL query feature. For example, if I wanted to look at categories, I come back here and I run a select all, maybe where, okay, let me just say maybe where the ID is 1. Then I click on go. So you see that it goes ahead and returns the result. So the SQL works normally here, just like the way we work with it locally.